Our computer is picking up a strange signal. Here, sir, you better take a look at it.
The ongoing mission? To explore the Star Wars universe and other nerd culture topics. To seek new content and new cantinas, bars, and lounges. To boldly annoy Scruffy by making too many bad jokes. Welcome to the Hyperspace Heroes Podcast.
Alrighty, welcome.
Hey,
Sorry
I know
about
you
that.
guys.
Hey, I know you. Sorry about that start late, everybody. Welcome to the show. We were having technical difficulties with everything tonight, but yeah, thanks for tuning in. Welcome to Hyperspace Heroes. This is Brown Leader signing in. All wings report in.
Brown 2 signing in.
Brown 4 standing by.
Brown 54 is here.
Welcome, Brian. Brown 54 is back. Thank you for joining us tonight. After that rough start, I think that's the roughest start we've ever had, guys.
Did you try unplugging it and plugging it back in?
Yeah, right. Do a simple reboot.
Did you give it a boot?
I'm about to give it this new software. I don't know. But yeah, welcome to Hyperspace Heroes episode 119 and or 144 on the Spotchka scale. And we have Bryan Young, author, filmmaker, podcaster, co-host of Full of Sith podcast, which I am very jealous of the fact that they have a Wikipedia entry and we do not. But maybe one day, guys.
Okay, that's epic.
Right?
Goals. We have goals and missions in life.
We do. And we have a couple people checking in the chat. Let's see if
you can see the chat.
I can. So Delphi Rangers,
Delphi.
welcome aboard. Checking in, and let's see what we got. Ubaldo, welcome to the show. And yes, Ubaldo, Brown 54. Ubaldo's the one on social media that reached out. He follows Brian on /film. So big fan. And but for those that don't know you, Brian, why don't you kind of tell everybody a little bit about yourself real quick?
In the Star Wars realm, I've been covering Star Wars as a journalist for a long time, since Clone Wars started back in 2008. So I've been covering Star Wars for a long time as a reviewer and journalist, and have written for StarWars.com, Star Wars Insider for a long time. I've written tons of official stuff. Lately, I've been writing most of the Topps Star Wars trading cards, which is a lot of fun. And have been running Full of Sith, which just last week we had our 12th anniversary as a podcast.
Wow.
So we've got more than 600 episodes over those years, and we've interviewed everybody. You can go back and listen to all the episodes, and we've had everybody on the show from, Phil Tippett and Carrie Fisher to Peter Mayhew and Vanessa Marshall and, Dave Prowse. Just a lot of people on the show over the years. A lot of authors, a lot of voice actors, a lot of the talent behind the movies. This last year, we did a lot of really cool stuff with our, the anniversary of the 25th of Phantom Menace. So I dug out of my archives and pulled out a 2.5-hour interview I did with Rick McCallum, which was a lot of fun.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And then I'm also, like you said, an author and a filmmaker. So in the world of fiction, I'm working a lot in the world of BattleTech and Shadowrun. And right now I've got a short film that's doing the festival circuit. So it's traveling around the world doing festivals. And I'm just next month heading to New York to do a festival there. So, but my latest BattleTech book is called VoidBreaker, and it came out last week, and just really, really proud of it and had a lot of fun with it. And hopefully we get to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, actually, that is one of the main things we're going to talk about tonight. And from Ubaldo, great episodes and interviews. Yeah, definitely. I listened to full of Sith, so I definitely recommend it for other listeners. Definitely put them on your rotation for sure. But yeah, we're here to talk about for the first half of the show tonight. We're going to start talking about, and I'm going to bring it up here on the screen so that we can see your new book, which is VoidBreaker. And yeah, which is a BattleTech novel set in the BattleTech universe. Grew up playing the game, read a lot of the novels like we were talking about before the show, read a lot of Stackpole stuff that got me into, and that was what I read was the initial invasion of the clans, and now we're at the point where we're 100 years past the invasion of the clans, kind of the new era that you're telling stories in mostly. But this book was a little bit of a departure from kind of what I would classify as a typical BattleTech book.
Yeah, a lot of BattleTech books are very strictly military sci-fi. And here's a military unit, we've got a whole bunch of mechs, and we're going to go smash that objective. And this was very much me going, it would be really fun. We'll get our mech battles in and everything, but the story that we needed to tell felt like it would be perfect for a Mission Impossible James Bond style spy thriller, like a big espionage thriller in the BattleTech universe. And I felt like I could build it like it would be welcoming to new readers and act as a standalone and act as something that would be refreshing for old readers and inviting to new readers. So it's all new characters for the most part that lead you through the story, although there's some returning characters based on what the story is about and when it's set. But yeah, it's meant to feel like you're picking up one of those old Ian Fleming James Bond paperbacks at the airport, and you can read it on the plane and have a hell of a ride.
That's exactly what it felt like when I read it. And I was like, oh, it's like a James Bondette, and because it's got a female lead. And I thought, yeah, it was quite a departure, because I think I don't remember if I'd sent you a message or not, but I was like, what is up with this 16 chapters in we have to go 16 chapters till our first mech battle? What the heck?
Yeah. Which is it's not normal, but for the story we had to tell, this is actually a really important novel in BattleTech, in that back in 2000 or so, there was a story that started the era called the Dark Age, where prior to that in the universe, interstellar communication was very easy. And if you're caught up, to put it in Star Wars terms, you know how you can just sort of talk to anybody, you can send a transmission and you can talk to anybody. Imagine that's kind of how the galaxy was, and all of a sudden that stops, and it kind of goes back to the sort of technology of the High Republic era, where you've got to put like messages in droids and they have to travel for weeks, and then that's how you have to get messages out. And some catastrophe happened that no one quite understands, and for the last 30 years in the universe, no one has been able to have that instant communication. And this is the story of the special ops team that gets assembled to fix that problem once and for all. And they have to assemble all of the information and science data that they have about the problem, but also the brilliant scientist who they think is the one who could actually put it all together and kidnap him and get him to work on all of it. So it is a pretty important story in BattleTech, because this is something that's affected the universe for the last 30 years in universe, and almost 30 years out of the universe in our real timeline too. So but the nature of the story felt like it required those moves to sort of put the mech battles off a little bit to get to that point, so that we understood all of those stakes.
Yeah, exactly. And guys, I know you aren't into this universe. But it's like, you know how when you're watching more realistic space and there's communication lag times, you know, the further out you go from Earth, it gets into minutes and hours. And, you know, if you're trying to communicate with something, well, it's like this. They had instant communication across, mankind has expanded to hundreds and thousands of worlds across space, from Earth. And they had this technology that could instantly transmit messages, and they lost that ability. So they were back to, you would have to have a ship jump into system, and then it could be hours for the message from the ship to reach the planet, or they would send couriers. And some of the physics of this world are more realistic in the fact that it can take you weeks to get from your location and system down to planetfall. And you know, and so to lose instant communication like that, and I miss that whole era of the novels before coming back into it. And yeah, what a and it was you're right in the importance of in-universe. And as soon as I saw that was the topic of the main mission of the book, I could see why it was so important, for sure, because I was getting frustrated with just listening to the characters have to wait for information, and sometimes days, weeks, months, you know, between getting communication between planets. It's kind of like sitting with Scruffy in a meeting when he's had 2 hours of sleep, and you know, it's you're just waiting and waiting and waiting. But
there's a point. I'm trying to get to it.
Exactly. But yeah, so what was, you know, was this kind of your idea, or was it Catalyst's idea for this, to bring this now back into to bring the hyperspace generator? Is it the hyperspace generators?
So the hyperpulse generators. So with any of these big franchises, right? Like, they have these big creative summits where the future of the universe gets charted. And at the last one, I was fortunate enough to be part of that. So like me and Mike Stackpole and a lot of the other, a number of the other major writers and developers and the people who have a lot of skin in the game as far as the universe is concerned, we all got together at a hotel in Seattle a couple years ago and started charting the course for the universe. And at one point, one of the developers and I sort of pulled off to the side, and there's maps of the universe and all sorts of things tacked around this hotel conference room. And we started having a conversation about this, and part of the plan was to bring the hyperpulse generators, which is the communication system, back online. And we started talking about what that would look like, and we started charting out on the map what planets they'd need to go to and how that would need to happen. And I just sort of looked at him, Ray Arastia, the line developer, and said, you know, this would make a great James Bond movie. And he said, well, how would that work? And I just sort of explained how the different jumps and what the intrigue would feel like. And he's like, well, we'll write that proposal up and we'll do that. And that's what the book turned into. So it was very much a collaboration of him saying, these are the things we need to happen, and me going, I bet that would fit into this container. And us just sort of collaborating on that at this big creative summit with, you know, the 10 people in the world that know the future of the BattleTech universe.
All right. That's cool. So you didn't have to fight it. You just had the best proposal for the concept and got the job.
Well, I don't think anybody else wanted it either. I think so many people there's so many fans of BattleTech that are like, what's going on with the hyperpulse generators? What's going on with the communication system? That any answer they get is going to be the wrong one. So I don't think anybody else wanted to fall on that grenade. And I was the new kid at that point. I'm still kind of the new kid in BattleTech. I mean, compared to Mike Stackpole, everybody's the new kid, right?
Yeah. Yeah, right.
And so I was just like, well, this story sounds fun. At least it'll be a fun grenade to fall on.
Confetti.
You know, yeah. Well, and I just had fun writing the book. It was just an enjoyable book to write. And I hope that comes across when people read it, that it just feels like fun.
It did. It seemed like the story just kind of flowed from you in terms of the writing. So our main protagonist is Kit Finn. She is a member of the Watch for Clan Sea Fox, which is a clan I don't remember them in the original because it always focused on your Clan Wolf, Clan Jade Falcon, and a few of the other main ones. They didn't really get into a lot of the 20 original. But Clan Sea Fox, and as soon as I heard that they were, the description of their clan being more of a merchant, a trader clan was interesting. Again, breaking from the traditional clan structure. Has Clan Sea Fox always been around, or is that are they?
Clan Sea Fox was one of the original 20 clans. They have been sort of redefined as a merchant clan, or defined as a merchant clan. Back during the Dark Age, there was a book that Randall Bills wrote called Hunters of the Deep that really established a lot of the lore for this. And that was sort of my Bible for how Sea Foxes functioned.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a whole lot of other stories about them. There's a few others. There's one called Skulk of Foxes by Jason Hansa. There's another one. There's a story called Riptides, and they sort of appear here and there, but there wasn't a whole lot of major lore aside from source books and things. So they haven't been in the spotlight a whole ton. But it was very interesting to see, this group of warriors that said our battlefield is the markets and the bazaars and trade, and see what they would do for espionage. What would that look like for them? And what would the missions that they went after look like? And what would the people who are devoted to them, what would their true north be? You look at people like Ethan Hunt and what he's willing to risk everything for, even if it puts him off sides with his government, or James Bond and what he's willing to risk for everything and put over Queen and country. And, what is that for Kenja, or Kitefin, the main character in this, as far as being a clan character. So it was really fun trying to work out those things for what would be, what would be one of these characters, because you have to deal with the fact that it's a science fiction universe. You're dealing with a culture that is alien in some way, and you're also dealing with the fact that they were alien 100 years ago when the clans invaded, when you were reading those initial books, but they've also spent the last 100 years exposed to an alien culture themselves and have evolved a lot. And so to handle that evolution and see how they've changed, it was a really interesting, unique challenge, and it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah. The Delphi Rangers, I put that up on the screen a minute ago. Ghost Bears and Smoke Jaguars, they were, of course, the two of the other major ones. And I made a note about Ghost Bears because I want to come back to them in a couple minutes. But and then Delphi Rangers also threw up there. He has a Shadowrun alt account too. I'm gonna have to dig that out and find out. Good man, Delphi Rangers. There's more of us Shadowrunners out there than I expected. So was it your choice to involve Clan Sea Fox, or was it kind of
that was decided? Actually, there was a moment in a source book that came out well before our creative summit, that there was a moment where a message comes through on an HPG network from Clan Sea Fox that fans of BattleTech that had read that source book already knew that they had somehow gotten an HPG network or an HPG station running, but no one knew how or why. And so that was part of why it had to be Clan Sea Fox. And this was the story of like, well, how in the world did that happen? And so this was partially revealing the details behind how that happened. And ultimately, we see that transmission get made in the course of this story.
Okay. Oh, that's very cool. That's very cool. Because I wanted to ask. I'm like, well, you've got your Fox Patrol, and now you're writing a book about Clan Sea Fox, and I'm like, what is your fascination with foxes, man?
It's totally an accident, right? Like the Fox Patrol was just something I named the Fox Patrol after my Boy Scout, like my little squad of in Boy Scouts when I was a kid.
Oh,
We
okay.
were the Fox Patrol, and then I got handed the Sea Foxes, and they predated my involvement with BattleTech for a long time. But I've also written a lot about the Jade Falcons. I've written a lot about the Ghost Bears. I've written a lot about just about, you know,
What is that
well,
offshoot
that's
of Kellhounds?
yeah, the Ghost Dogs.
The Ghost Dogs. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'll write about more factions than that too. So whatever animal totem they have, I'll take those. But yeah, foxes are great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that because I know I started noticing a trend there, so I just had to ask you about it. But the and so that the guys understand, in this universe you have humans that have spread out. You had these militant group leave hundreds of years ago because they didn't like the way the human culture was going amongst these planets and how divided they were and everything. So the military elite left, and then they came back hundreds of years later as the clans, and they're a very militaristic society. Everything is there's a hierarchy, and the warrior caste is the highest caste. It's a caste system, and they are the cream of the crop. And merchants are looked at as a lower caste. And so to have a book about a lower caste, primarily about the lower caste, and then them being the ones to bring back the technology of communication is a really big power coup move in this kind of as a society. And so it was kind of cool to see a different cast. And now that I go back to some of your other books, Brian, you've been there's been some of the seeds being laid in terms of putting more of a spotlight on those merchant groups, to where then when you transition to this book, it's like, oh, okay, I kind of see where this is going.
Yeah. That's one of the things that's been nice, being able to work. A lot of my work in BattleTech has sort of been focused in one area of time, and for the most part, one area geographically. One area geographically meaning the one huge swath of space, but still more narrow than just the entire inner sphere. But
so are we going to see more of Kite Fox and Clan Sea Fox, or is that still yet to be determined kind of thing? Is this a standalone novel at this point?
It's a standalone. If folks like it and folks really respond to the spy shenanigans of Clan Sea Fox, then we might see more. But that's ultimately a call that sales and fan reaction is going to determine.
Right on. I had mentioned earlier I wanted to touch back on Ghost Bears. In your Jade Falcon novels, you pretty much left Clan Ghost Bear a mess to the point where I felt really bad for them.
Yeah.
In terms of how they were falling apart. Are we going to get some more? Are we going to get to see them kind of regroup or fall apart?
No. So there is a source book called Dominions Divided that kind of talks about what happened to them. But it's a little bit of a 30,000 foot overview. I have written a full-length project that's sort of mini projects that add up to a full project. I don't know when that's coming out, but it does cover a boots on the ground view of the Ghost Bear Civil War, sort of leading up to it, covering it and that aftermath. And I'm really excited about that to come out. But I don't know where it is on the schedule. But I am excited for it. There's only one thing I know for sure what is next on the schedule, but it's not that.
Right. Because what was the novel before, Without Question?
Question of Survival,
where you really tackle that with Ghost Bears and the Jade Falcons, going head to head for all those cadets. And Yeah, I didn't know who I wanted to win in that book. I felt for both
Yeah.
sides. Neither side really was going to be the winner. Well, no, actually, I guess Jade Falcons were, but I just, I didn't know who I wanted to lose. I didn't want either side to lose because I felt bad for both of their situations. And,
yeah, that was really the point. I got into that book, and the thing that excited me the most about that book was like, nobody's going to be the bad guy here. You're going to feel for both of them, and I want you to like hate the fact that one of them is going to have to win.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's been an interesting watch, having come back into the universe and watching. When I left, it was clans versus the inner sphere, and it was pretty black and white. It was, and then to come back now and you see how the different clans have either overrun their territories in the inner sphere, or like the Ghost Bears have integrated in with their the Rasselhag League, and to see the different ways that they've done that it's been a kind of a cool entry point back in.
Yeah.
But speaking of entry point, you had mentioned earlier, this book in particular, VoidBreaker, is a great entry point for people that have not read BattleTech.
I think so. Yeah, I think if you're interested in just like cool spy thrillers, I think this can stand as that, whether you like are interested in BattleTech or not, because I think it just plays as an entertaining, cool thriller. I've tried to tackle all of my BattleTech books, but this one more than some of the others, with the advice that I interviewed Max Allan Collins once, and he gave me some advice. He was talking about his run on Batman at one point, and he told me that sort of the wisdom that he'd been given by the comic book establishment was that every issue was going to be someone's first, and you never want to turn someone off because they pick up an issue of Batman and they go, I don't know what the hell's going on. Especially because it's a kid's book. I mean, at that point when he was writing it, it was the early 80s, and he kind of told the story about how when he was writing Batman, it was also when they were making like the DC the action figures, right? Like if you remember those DC action figures where they put out Batman and Robin and Darkseid, like everybody got their own like action figures, and they packaged them with comics, and the toy company went through and they picked all the comics they were going to package them with, and he ended up with like half the comics in those because they looked at all the comics and they said, well, these are the ones that feel like they'd be good entry points for the characters, because he was using that philosophy of like, this could be somebody's first. And that really, like, I mean, I interviewed him 15 years ago, and that still just sort of like resonates in my brain. Like, I don't want anybody to pick up a BattleTech book I'm reading and go, no, this isn't for me. I don't understand what the hell's going on. I want anybody to pick it up and be able to go, I might not know about BattleTech, but this is an entertaining story. And maybe I could get into BattleTech this way, or to have someone who has, a friend, a kid, a spouse, something that maybe they're really into BattleTech and their partner or whoever isn't, that maybe they could say, I think you might like this one because you like these sorts of books. Check this one out. And I hear that a lot with like the Fox Patrol stories. I hear a lot of like, my wife really loved this, or my kid really loved this, and they don't usually like BattleTech. So I think there's some method to my madness that happens to be working, but who knows?
Right.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm looking at a list of BattleTech books, and I'm just like, there is no way I'm going to be able to get into this. But the idea of being able to pick up, a book or any book in that series as an entry point is, obviously way more appealing than trying to go back from, 1988?
Yeah.
Read 4 from there.
Yeah. No, that's way too intimidating.
It is, without a doubt. And from Carbonites, that's an awesome philosophy to have as a creator.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. And 2 points I wanted to touch on there, which was one, yeah, I can see why. I can see that kind of response from Fox Patrols, because it is not your typical military fiction cast of characters. Your heads of state, your head warriors, your generals, your rogue warriors, or in the case of BattleTech, your elite mercenary groups, or that kind of thing. It's much more of a family dynamic, found family, actually, dynamic, which is a great appeal in the Star Wars universe. And so I can, that makes sense why you would get feedback like that. I can totally see that, because they are not your standard merc group or anything in the BattleTech universe.
It's a mercenary group that's founded by initially a 16-year-old girl who ends up, she's obsessed with mechs, and she is apprenticed to a mech technician. So she's learning how to work on mechs, and her dream is to pilot mechs. And she finds one sort of secretly in the woods one day that's been abandoned for who knows how long. And she finds a dead mech pilot in it. And they've been there for a long time. And she takes the mech out and she repairs it sort of in secret. And when her town is under attack, she brings it out and sort of reveals that secret. And that's sort of her first step into becoming a mercenary captain. And sort of she slowly builds a family of really terrible mech pilots that and she's the only one who knows how to maintain the mechs. So it's sort of that really, like, these people don't quite have any business being mercenaries, but they all really like each other and they're really charming. And and so I think that has a lot of appeal for people. Mm-hmm. And they're just fun to write. They're really fun.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other thing I want to touch on, the great thing about BattleTech books now is at the end of every BattleTech book, there is a glossary of the history of the universe, terms that are used in the universe. And then also, because they'll name off, there are like hundreds of different mech designs, weight classes, functions that they do, and they will list the mechs that were in the book at the back of the book. So
with pictures. So here's VoidBreaker. So if you look, like, if you get to the name of a mech in the middle of the book, you can go back and they've got all the mechs that are in the book and pictures of them alphabetically in the back. So you can go back and look at every mech in the book and go, that's exactly what mech it is.
Yep. And for any long, some of the mech designs are a little familiar, some of the original ones. For anybody, any old Robotech fans, some of the designs are very similar. There's some legal things. I know we talked to somebody previously on an episode, talked about the whole separation of how that came to be back in the day. But yeah, Robotech and BattleTech do share some designs on some of the original mech designs that they have. So some of that may seem familiar, but yeah, anything else about VoidBreaker, Brian, that you'd like to touch on?
No, I hope people check it out. I think it's got people who know me from my Star Wars work definitely will recognize how much I love Star Wars and all of my BattleTech work. So you can take the Star Wars out of. I can take the Star Wars out of the stuff I'm writing, but you can't take the Star Wars out of me, if that makes sense. So it definitely has the thumbprint of someone who is drowned on a steady diet of Star Wars his entire life.
Right.
I don't think there's any getting away from that.
Very well put.
Yeah. All right. So one of the other things that BattleTech, and here's the transition point. One of the other things that's in BattleTech is you've got your kingdom, so to speak, your realms, your mercenary groups, which are for hire, and you also have pirates. And that's going to be the segue over into the next part of the show that we're going to talk about.
Goonies never say die. Goonies never.
All right, once is enough. All right, so Skeleton Crew, and Brian, we wanted to have you come on today. We have not done this is our wrap up of Skeleton Crew. Hopefully, season 1, and we'll get to see more. But as we get into the discussion, I also want to mention that just earlier tonight, Brian on all of his socials shared an interview that he did with Christopher John Watts, and it's a fun interview because it's written from a slightly different approach. Instead of a mass media, they focus more on the writing of Skeleton Crew, and I've posted links to it also on all of our socials, so I definitely encourage everyone to check that out. I'm sure we'll be touching on it during this discussion. But Skeleton Crew, I mean, who wants to go first? I think we're probably going to all have similar likes. But Brian, what was your overall thoughts on the series?
Overall, I mean, it definitely hit me where I live. I mean, I was a kid of the 80s and the 90s, so I loved all of the E.T., Goonies, Amblin 80s vibe that it brought me. I loved the literary references to Treasure Island and all of the stuff that it brought me, and the kids were just so charming. Like, I could just follow those kids around the galaxy like nobody's business, in a way that I wasn't expecting. But also, after, if you think about Star Wars sort of swinging on the pendulums of what's possible in Star Wars, on one end, you've got, Andor as the harshest and most adult it can get. And on the other side of the pendulum, you've got the softest and most adventurous it can get, and that's where you've got Skeleton Crew. And I think they pushed it about as far that way as Andor pushed it the other direction. And I love both of those extreme poles of Star Wars. And it was just a breath of fresh air. It was like a warm hug of Star Wars.
Yeah, I could see that. DB,
that's the best description I've heard yet. A warm hug of Star Wars. It really is, because I mean, the only thing missing there was One-Eyed Willie and for SM33 to yell, "Hey, you guys!" I mean, and I just was finishing a rewatch before we came on the air tonight, and it's the first time I had watched all 8 back to back, and wow, it's just fun. It's just fun.
I think so too. Scruff?
Yeah, I love that 80s Amblin vibe feel to it. I love that it was written, it had a written for kids today kind of a feel to it, yet still had a lot of those 80s reference, like the Latchkey kids. Her dad drops $100 on the table, say, "Here's your lunch money for the week. Behave yourself, stay out of trouble."
Yeah,
just that, and it's just like that reminded me of some of my childhood. Plus the references, like Shmi. Only an '80s kid would remember who Shmi was. Mm-hmm. And like the article said, I love that they gave the kids the crabby babysitter kind of a robot feel that's rusted, broke down, instead of the cute robot. It definitely had to be that opposite feel to it, with the kids being so charming. But yeah, I absolutely loved it.
Those kids are so relatable. Between Neil and Wim, I could pick up a lot of the things that my best friend at age 10 and I would have interacted that same way. Right from, the opening where they're having the fake lightsaber battle on the street, and the rest of the kids are just staring at them like, "What are you guys doing?" Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, we've done that before too.
Okay, yeah. I'm not talking about the hallway at work earlier today there, Scruff. And, no. We totally would have done that at the bus stop, though. I mean, that.
Oh, yeah. And then get the looks from the rest of the kids standing there going, "What are you weirdos doing?"
And the fact that their bus driver was Rex, not Captain Rex, but Rex from Star Tours. Mm-hmm. I mean, what an Easter egg. I mean, amongst multiple Easter eggs in this show.
Oh, yeah. Ubaldo gives it a solid 9 out of 10. And then Delphi Rangers chiming in with, "It was great, but X-Wings, plus B-Wings, no Carson Teva." Yeah.
I think he might be in trouble right now because of the whole Ahsoka situation, though.
Nah, that could be, yeah. Yeah, we were hoping, just because we've talked to Paul's a really nice guy, and we love the Carson Teva character, and we were just, he and Ahsoka had been the only one in every Mandoverse show so far, and we were just hoping for that streak to continue. So
yeah,
if
A
they
little
can,
bit of a letdown.
if they can do a season 2, I get why they didn't, and it's fine from a storytelling standpoint. It's great because there are other X-Wing groups out there. There's, it's a big universe, big galaxy. But we're really crossing our fingers for season 2 now, just for another chance at a cameo, because we just want to have them in every show, just for that one little nugget of
Absolutely.
cool.
And that's why it only gets an 8 out of 10 for me.
Back on the previous topic, Delphi Ranger named in with Comstars were the Jedi and Word of Blake were the Sith. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Jedi were a little bit more noble than Comstar.
Yeah, Comstar was kind of, they were in it for the credits for sure.
Yeah. No, I think going back to that idea about how 80s it was, though, and how it encapsulated that I think for the adults in the audience, I love that kind of gave us as adults some of those moments with the adult characters, right? I had a smile on my face ear to ear in, I want to say it was the penultimate episode, where it opens with the parents in the woods setting up the communications thing with the flashlights and everything. And it's this is the end of ET, where he's setting up his thing to go home, but it's the adults doing all of this. And they have a reason to be doing this, and they're having the same adventure that the kids are. And it's the same thing I'd be doing if I were one of the adults there, but it's the same thing the kids were doing earlier, and it's tying them all together, and it's giving me that nostalgia going yeah, I'd be doing that too. It was so well wrought. It was just really good.
And I having read your article, and again, I encourage everybody to go read that. Just check either of our socials, but I like the fact that they were focused on, they and your article is great because it focused on it from the writing perspective, and it showed the mindset, because we all have questions. There was a bit in there about how at first they were just throwing in those references like SM-33. They threw it in there just as a reference point. That wasn't necessarily going to be the name of the droid, but they didn't go back and change it. And at first they thought it was going to be hokey and everybody was going to hate it. But it hit the right chord. And the other thing that they went back and did was they had kind of flushed out the characters, the kids, but once the kids came in, they went back and started rewriting to fit as they saw the kids play and rehearsal and do their things, and some of their own personalities shone through. They went back and changed some of the character bits to match the actors, which I think is why a leading reason on why their acting was actually really so good. I mean, it seemed so natural because they formed some of the characters around their personality traits.
Yeah. They found the characters through the kids and vice versa. They cast the characters, they cast the kids based on their initial ideas of the characters, then got to know the kids and said, no, we can go further with this. And it really leaned into their strengths. And they all really just knocked it out of the park. And the story they told about the kid, Robbie, who plays Neil, was so funny. They were because they talked about how they initially wrote Neil a little bit more wide-eyed, like Elliot and E.T., and they're but he's just so gung-ho and kind and trusts everybody immediately that they kind of rewrote him that way. And they talked about how on his first day on set, he was supposed to run up a hill and sort of fall down, and he just couldn't. He was just so full of energy. He ran straight up the hill and was just oh, I guess I did it. I guess I'm at the top of the hill now. And they're oh, we're just, that's Neil now. We're going to rewrite to make that Neil. and that's how we kind of got Neil, was that marriage of who they thought the character was, who it turned out the character was, because the kid imbued it with that. And then how they rewrote the character to match that. It was just so, I think that's a really smart move on the part of the creatives, because sometimes, you know, you might get a creative, you know, it's fortunate they didn't pull like a Stanley Kubrick and say like, no, we're going to do this 900 times until you do it exactly the way I had it scripted, you know?
Right. So the writing was on point, and then I liked even though it was in a way a small story, it was in a big universe, and it felt like it was a small story in a big universe, which again goes back to, in my opinion, the experience of the storytellers. You know, you've got to have experienced storytellers that understand that Star Wars is a universal feel of a story, and you can have tiny little parts, and that's fine. Like this was a small story, but it's got to feel epic. It's got like it's part of that epic universe, and I think that they definitely accomplished it in this show.
Yeah, I'm glad they kept it as a series and not a movie. Reading the article, I forgot that it was originally supposed to be a movie, or it was announced that it was possibly going to be a movie, and I'm glad they kept it into a series, because jamming that much story into a 2 hour, 2.5 hour, 3 hour movie would have felt something was lost.
I think one of the things I appreciated about this, we keep talking, these kids were just so fantastic. I mean, they completely wore these characters. I mean, these kids are these characters, and the writing, and we've kind of noted this before. They were using prequel era slang. You know, everything that was cool was wizard. And these kids pulled that off like it was typical slang to them. You know, it flowed. It wasn't hokey, you know?
Well, I like the we talked about it too before, which was the cultural terms that some of, like Kim, when Jod or Crimson Jack was bringing the kids, she didn't say he's bringing a group of kids. He's bringing a flock of children with them. And, you know, there were little subtle cultural or species terminology terms in there that goes to that level of attention to detail that I thoroughly enjoy.
Brutus refers to them as pups.
Yes, exactly. Brian, I know you had a chance to watch this with one of your sons, right?
Yeah. No, and I'll tell you, my 9-year-old, I watched it with my 9-year-old, and he, I think kids that age just use wizard normally because they've watched Phantom Menace so much. Because I know my 9-year-old uses wizard. But that also could be because I use wizard, ironically, because I love Phantom Menace so much. So I wonder if wizard is just part of that group of kids, like that era of kids, because Phantom Menace is 25 years old, right? Like that's like us using terminology from
that's painful to hear.
Well, it's actually this year it's 26.
Yep.
But
who's counting?
Revenge of the Sith is 20 this year.
Yeah.
And Force Awakens is 10 this year.
That's so painful.
But my 9-year-old really loved it, and they were really into it. And I just shown them Goonies probably 4 or 5 months ago, and it was something they were really into, and they sort of recognized some of those connections to it. And that was something that I talked to those guys in the article about it, about how he didn't necessarily recognize like why they were taking the kids to some of the places that they were taking them to. Because he'd asked at one point, like, why is she showing Neil this cannon? Like, why are we going here? Why can't they just go do their thing? And it's like, buddy, this is gonna end up important later. And he's like, no, it's not. It's like, yeah, it is. It's like, that's just how stories work, man.
It's funny. I think Brown Leader and I had that same discussion at work.
It's
not. No, it's not. Yes, it is.
Yep. Yeah, that final episode, I was like, okay, come on, they got to get to the cannon. Come on, they got to get to it. Yeah.
You know, go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, as soon as Neil started going up to the roof, my kid just looks at me like,
yeah,
like, because my wife and my kid, they both just hate watching shows with me because I'll just point out all of the. It's like it's an unconscious thing when we're watching TV. I don't do it at the theater because you have to be like silent. Like that's like, you know, it's like talking in the middle of like a sermon or something. You just don't do it. But at home, watching a show, it's just like, oh, that's going to come back here and that's going to do that. Oh, that person's obviously the killer. And here's the 3 bits of filmmaking that told me that. So they hate it when I watch shows with them because I will like do all of that stuff. And 99 times out of 100, I'm right. And I'm like, how can it be a spoiler? I haven't seen this before. Right. Like, it's not a spoiler because I don't know for sure. And they're like, it's a spoiler because you know how stories work. And I'm like, after your entire existence of me doing this, shouldn't you know how stories work by now? But no. So they don't like me talking through those things. But that was one of those that he didn't even believe me on. But no, he actually, the moment he loved the most, and he actually got up and like cheered, was when SM-33 turned on Jod and took Fern's like, close enough, and knocked Jod out. And that's just such a satisfying moment emotionally, because you want SM-33 to do it. And when he does, it's just like, I don't even care that doesn't make sense. It's such a perfect moment emotionally.
It is. You're absolutely right. Speaking of Jod, you know, there's always I know a lot of Star Wars fans, we're okay with them casting a lot of unknowns, because Star Wars was kind of built on unknowns, right? And you know, in the original films, Alec Guinness was the biggest name, you know, when Star Wars launched. And so we always get a little nervous when they cast well-known actors or actresses in Star Wars. And so when Jude Law was cast for, you know, Skeleton Crew way back when, we were kind of like, well, you know, we'll see, right? I mean, it's a well-known actor. We'll see if he can play the part or not, or, you know, see how he does. One of the things that I always gauge a performance by is, do I see the actor playing a role, or do I just see the role and I forget about the actor? And I gotta say, my thought, Jude Law knocked it out of the park. And I did not see Jude Law the whole show. I saw Jod Nanawood or Crimson Jack or one of his other 5 aliases throughout the whole show. And I that was a great choice on Jude Law, I think, for this role. Thoughts, anybody?
I totally agree that I lost the actor and I saw the character, and I thought this guy in the same age bracket would have been hanging out with Han Solo and Lando Calrissian. You know, they would have been like hyperspace heroes, just hanging out and causing trouble. So.
Brian, your thoughts on Jude Law's role in this?
I think it was really important for them to cast someone who could be that anchor, right? Like, you've got the kids, you need somebody that can anchor that emotional weight and can add that gravitas to act against them. And so he's like the Alec Guinness to the unknowns in Star Wars, or he's the Michael Caine to the Muppets. You know what I mean? I think that's I think that's exactly what he did, right? Like, he provided that weight to it that sometimes maybe the kids aren't bringing, because they're bringing that chaos Muppet energy, honestly, you know? And talking to them about what he brought to the character, where they were writing it where he was just sort of over explaining his lies and having him bring that, like, no, I need to under explain this. I need to let them come to those conclusions, and I need to let them draw these things out. I need to keep my lies very close to the truth. Brought so much more nuance to the character in the writing, in a way that it could have gone a totally different way, and that character could have been spoiled in a way that I didn't realize it could have been on the verge of if they had cast someone else. Right? Just doing that interview, I didn't realize how close to maybe a different take, or possibly even disaster, it could have been.
No, you're right. And even if he had played it more the way they had originally thought, the performance would have seemed a little more shallow or a little more empty. No, that was a really good point. Guys, thoughts on Jude Law?
Yeah, you could tell he wanted to play this role. It wasn't a job to him. You could tell he was really into it. I'm not as familiar with Jude Law as the other guys are. Obviously I recognize him, but even saying that, I could tell he really wanted to play this character. He was really having fun with it.
DB
loved him in The Holiday. No, I'm just. I have to bring that up because it's really the only other thing I know him from. So
I love Jude Law. I've loved him in so much stuff. Whether it was like he's so good in Gattaca, Talented Mr. Ripley.
Gattaca.
I just watched him again in Spielberg's AI. He was in Cold Mountain with Natalie Portman. The thing about Jude Law is he is that very proper British actor who can really just sort of melt into a role, and he has this really pretty everyman quality, right? But here he actually brings the scruffy pirate scoundrel. And I think that's what makes it feel like he melts into that role, because everywhere else we've seen him, like even in AI, he's a he's a male pleasure bot who literally has like plastic skin and who looks perfect and flawless. In Cold Mountain, he's a soldier who is just like this pretty boy love. He's trying to get back to his romantic interest. In Gattaca, again, he's playing the part of a romantic lead, right? I think we broke him.
We broke him.
But here, there's no hint of that romantic lead, right? He's a guy who can get up in front of a group of pirates and start singing a shanty and pulling them back onto his side. Or killing them.
Contagion's the only thing I remember him from, really.
So basically, DB.
Yeah, basically.
There we go.
In a nutshell.
If you ever seen him run a promotion, we're going to start calling him Jod.
You're never going to know if I'm a good guy or bad guy or just in it because I'm hungry. All right.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right, Brian. That's exactly the quality he brought to it. Is he was in such a gray area, he would kind of slime his way into whatever he had to say to get out of the situation.
Yeah.
Or to advance himself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his career was actually really important to the arc the character took, because if you think about it, his arc is really the Long John Silver arc, right? From Treasure Island, where he goes in and gets into Jim Hawkins's good graces, and he convinces him he's on his side until he gets everything he needs out of Jim, until he can go get the treasure himself, and then turns on him and becomes murderous. And that's really what Jod's arc is for these kids. And so for us to go, oh, Jude Law's this romantic lead in everything else he's done, I want to believe he's going to be a good guy. So even just on a meta level for us, knowing him from his past career, we want to believe that he's going to be a good guy. So when he rescues the kids at Akron and he's giving them this great big hug, we want to believe he's not going to turn on them. But when he turns that saber on them and he challenges Fern in the treasure room, it hurts. It hurts them. We feel as betrayed as the kids.
Yeah, it was a great performance and a great bit of misdirection right there. Like you said, from Akron to the treasure room. And it was just masterful storytelling, and yet classic storytelling, which is great. I mean, it just shows that tried and true methods do work, can tell a good story. And then the other thing I know that I really enjoyed was they really to help with the whole galaxy and universal feel. You had characters of all species, like the pirate crews and everything. It was not. One of the things, Andor was really good. Andor was very dialogue heavy, and that can be very challenging with 50 different alien species and all the prosthetics, and getting it so that you can have that same intense dialogue, right? Especially in the Chandrila embassy scenes and things like that. So it kind of suffered because you didn't have that quite galaxy feel, but I think they really nailed it. Even Brutus came across I thought he came across really well. And then the CGI for Neil, I mean, holy smokes.
Even just the puppetry work on him too.
Mm-hmm.
Like that combination of CG and puppetry work it was I couldn't tell what was a puppet, what was CG, what was anything. They've really dialed in. I mean, ILM does the best work in the world and always has. So whether it's for TV or anything else.
Yeah. So here's a really good comment or question from the chat from Adelphi Rangers. Did Jod really negotiate on at Akron, or did he kill the other clan? I, for one, like the fact that we don't know. Yes. I like having the mystery because it helps. It lets us have discussions like this, and it helps us to develop headcanon, which is a thing that we love to do in this community. Any thoughts from anybody about? Do you think he killed him or negotiated?
I think that's the lost episode where Mandalorian came in and he killed the clan. Because we didn't get a standalone Mando episode out of this series.
No, we didn't.
Oh, no, we didn't.
All right, sorry, that was a cheap shot. But
no. Brian, any thoughts?
I think SM33 would have mentioned it. SM33 was babysitting him.
He was.
I gotta tell you, if there's a line that's been quoted in my house by my 9-year-old more than any other line of this show, it's like, "Come on, baby.
Yeah.
Get on the ship, baby." Like my 9-year-old has been saying that every time he tries to get me to come up the stairs ever since that episode aired. And it's like, I don't think they intended for that to be like the most quoted line in Star Wars in anybody's house, but holy, it is.
But it is.
I know. I remember when it aired, I was like, did they really just do that? And I was like, I was kind of dumbfounded, but I loved it at the same time. And I was like, this is not okay, whatever.
It's weird. Like you never know what's going to be one of those quoted, like oft quoted lines in Star Wars, but that is somehow going to end up in the canon of often quoted Star Wars lines.
Yeah,
it is. It used to, with the three of us, used to be, "This is the way." Now it's, "Come on, baby.
Come on, baby.
Get on the ship, baby.
Get on the ship, baby."
I can see a Robot Chicken episode with that line coming somewhere down the line.
Oh my god, I know.
Totally. Oh, absolutely, yes,
totally. Any other thoughts? What were some other things that you guys enjoyed about the show?
I like the fact that a lot of the production team were classic. I mean, Doug Chang worked on this one.
John Knoll.
I'm like, the guy from Ann Arbor. What's his name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just, there was just something you could tell. It was a classic Star Wars team behind the scenes in pre-production and model building on this.
Yeah. I think that's the least negativity I've seen online about was the lightsaber effect, and how all I heard was actually how good the lightsaber effect, because people want to debate as when they were too skinny in Rebels, or they were whatever, and you can definitely tell John Knoll had an impact as visual supervisor, because that lightsaber effect looked really darn good in the show. And I think that goes back to having a great combination of, and I think what another part that made the show successful was having people like John Knoll involved, but then having your fresh voices. You brought John Watts and Christopher Ford in, you brought in guest directors, but then you kind of mix it all up. So I think something that we've talked about before is some of the things that make successful Star Wars is where you have new, but you still have a touch of the old in terms of, there's things that are familiar about the story or the show, and in this case, it's on the production side as well, I think, where you have some of those new voices coming in, but you still have some of that experience of the traditional storytelling, and the two merged. And I think it was an overall success. Definitely, I think a top 3 streaming show for me.
Definitely.
Absolutely, they did a great job keeping it Star Wars without having too much Star Wars in it, if that makes any sense.
Back to the original question, but what were some of the other things that you guys enjoyed? Any other little parts or nuggets of the show that you guys? B-Wings, yes.
B-Wings, baby. That was just an epic scene.
It was.
Considering we never got enough B-Wings in Return of the Jedi. DB, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only other time we saw a B-Wing was in Rebels, the cartoon, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. And then suddenly the B-Wing comes in and a skeleton crew, and the laser cannons get a full showing this time, and it was awesome.
You know, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, how we saw the B-Wings at the beginning of the Battle of Endor, but then you never really see them Battle of Endor. And that was mostly because of limited technology in the early 80s. And I had never picked up on that, so I watched Return of the Jedi the other day. And I'm like, damn, they fly in for the attack, and then the B-Wings just
disappear.
They're gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had never noticed that before. So we actually got to see B-Wings in live action.
Yeah.
Do their thing.
One of the other, I just want to throw this comment up there. They're really great. The kids were great. The house always gets dusty when I watch Wim saving KB. I think that was a very underrated episode in terms of the significance of it, and it's touched on in Brian's article as well. Yeah. They talk about it in there, and I thought they had a really good point
the strong character becoming the weak needing to be saved. Yeah.
I really love one of the things I really loved is that final confrontation in the show, because I think it showed a lot of character growth for Wim and for Fern and for Jod. Because Wim gets to be the Jedi he wanted to be over the course of the show, and Fern gets to get her mom to see who she really is and believe her, and her mom has to throw away everything she thinks she knows about protecting her daughter to protect her daughter. And the look that Jod gives when he realizes everything's over and he still has the lightsaber and he turns it off, right? I think there's been a lot of debate about whether or not Jod can have this redemption or whatever, but I think the moment he turns off his lightsaber and surrenders is very telling, because he could have given in and slaughtered all of them for revenge, just as a tantrum, right? Like a Kylo Ren style tantrum for losing in that moment, right? But he turns off his saber. And when Wim and everyone else gets in the elevator and Jod remains, and they share that moment, that look to each other, and it reminds me a little bit of the look that Captain Renault and Rick share at the end of Casablanca after Rick has shot Major Strasser, and Renault is deciding whether or not he's going to tell his men to arrest Rick or round up the usual suspects. And it's like Wim kind of gives the look back like, okay, we're going to round up the usual suspects. And it feels like Jod is actually going to get like his act together and escape at that point. You know what I mean? Like it felt so powerful, and it did it without any of the dialogue. It did it with just the filmmaking and the acting with the kids and with Jude Law. And it was just such a really powerful moment that didn't need any words. And I think it's flown under the radar a little bit.
I appreciate the fact that they did not tell us exactly what happened to Jod.
Well, I got a theory. I got a theory too, because like he's the one who turned the power off when he put the saber into the supervisor, right? And then as soon as they get back down, the power starts coming back up, and he's the only one in the room where the power got lost, that maybe he's the one who restores the power.
Oh, that's a good point.
I didn't think of that.
I didn't think of that either.
Okay, so question from the chat, and then we'll kind of wrap this up. the question from Carbonites, which is which kid is your favorite? And Scruff, we'll start with you. Or actually, we'll start with another comment, which is from Adelphi Rangers. It's a tie for me. Neil and KB are like my twin 11-year-old girls. Very cool. Very cool. Favorite kid?
Wow. Probably Neil. A little bit of the rebellious attitude, kind of.
All right, DB.
Do I have to pick a kid?
Yes. That was the question. That was the question from the chat.
Okay, I'll start by prefacing with, I feel like Wim's dad. I'm just tired, and stop pulling this crap. All right. I could really relate to Wim's dad. But no, I referenced earlier that Neil and Wim were like me and my best friend at 10 years old. I was definitely Wim. I relate to Wim.
Mm-hmm. Brian.
I feel like it's sort of like a tie between Neil and Wim, because I feel like I'm much more, or when I was that age, I wanted to be much more of like, I'm very Neil, but my 9-year-old, I see so much just like unadulterated Wim in him.
Mm-hmm.
Where like, yeah, I could see him disappearing and crawling into a spaceship and taking off and just like, well, I guess I'm on this adventure now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right on.
Yeah.
From Carbonites, it's responding to Adelphi's comment about reminding him of his girls.
Now, Brown Leader, you didn't answer the question.
Yeah, so Wim, for sure, right from the get-go. As soon as I picked up the latchkey vibe from Wim and the Dreamer and not wanting to let go of his stories, and that was me for sure, without a doubt, growing up. And I used to get to go when I was like preschool age. My dad was a pilot, and I actually used to go flying with him 5 days a week for about a year and a half. And it was some of the best time of my life, just having that adventure, and it kind of infused that little bit of that dreamer spirit in me growing up. But yeah, Wim for sure. Okay. Any other, or I'll throw this one last little thing out there about Skeleton Crew, unless anybody else has any other points they want to make. But we've heard a couple different things out there in the rumor sphere, and which is that Embo is the bad guy for Mandalorian and Grogu, supposedly. But we've also heard that there are going to be some characters from Skeleton Crew appearing in Mando and Grogu. I saw one.
Won't be Brutus.
It won't be Brutus, right? I saw one theory that I liked, which was that by the leak of Embo, it's actually they're doing a Plo Koon feint like they did with season 2 of Mando, where they said they were filming Plo Koon, but it's actually going to be Jod instead, which would kind of, if he's back in piracy and he's on the loose, and you do it, and Mando's run into the pirates, it's all part of that same timeline. I could kind of, I could kind of see that.
You think Jod will team up with Captain Seaweed?
Seaweed's dead.
He's dead.
He's dead.
Salad the Hutt. Yeah.
Yeah, Gorian Shard died crashing into the surface of Navarro.
Mm-hmm. He did. And great sound effect. I still remember that sound effect to this day of that ship crashing. It was the same thing as the Executor going into the Death Star in Return of the Jedi, which I absolutely loved. All right. Any other thoughts on Skeleton Crew, or we'll get rolling?
Yeah. Cross your fingers. I want season 2.
Yeah. I'd be happy with season 2, but I could also, if that's where they ended the story, I'm okay with that too.
I would love to see more of those kids. I would love to see more Jod. I'd love to see just a Jod show. I'd love to see just a kid show. I would love to see just more pirates. Like they could give me, the Pirates of Starport Borgo and just that show, and I'd be happy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Instead of, what was it? They were going to do that Underworld show. They could do Pirates of Port Borgo. That would be a very cool concept.
Can we get a show where Wim's dad gets a vacation? I just want to see him. The guy's
Poor guy needs
overworked.
one.
Come on.
He's a level systems, level 7 systems operator or whatever it was.
I was just gonna give that quote, so thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's fly through collection corner really quick, and then we'll wrap this up tonight. Scruff.
Comic books.
Comic books. Yeah.
There it is.
There it is. Murder Bears.
The final Murder Bear issue.
That's the final issue?
It's only a 4-issue series?
Yeah, it was only a 4-issue series.
Okay. Well, thank you for the copy.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Anything else, Scruff?
No, that's it.
All right.
Yeah.
DB?
Yeah, I got the Murder Bears, and I unfortunately left it on my desk, but I did remember to bring this Lego.
Oh, yes. I forgot about the Lego. I put them together. It took me all of 10 minutes, because that was a tough one.
You opened the package?
I opened the package. He is in the cabinet right where I'm pointing at.
Nice. Well, we have Wade on in 2 weeks, and he runs a Bricks and Minifig store down in Chattanooga, so we'll have to bring those out again for that. So, anything else, DB?
No, we'll save it for another day.
Ubaldo throwing a comment in there about Wim's dad.
Level 7 vacation, yes.
Yeah, I think all three of us need a level 7 vacation.
Yeah, Brian, have you anything you've kind of added to your collection recently, or any other? I know we've talked about a few of the pieces in the past.
It looks like my wife has precariously put some other stuff on top of it, but I found a Black Series Shin Hattie on clearance for $7 at Target. So
what?
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I picked that up.
That's
I snagged 2. I got the last 2. So I'm opening one and then keeping the other one. I'm not a big fan of the 6-inch figures. I wish everything was all 3 3/4 still.
Yeah.
But if they're $7, I'll buy them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I've snagged a few of them.
Walmart's been running these at $10, which is the IG-12. IG-12 at the Enzellens.
I bought one of those for my wife for $30 because she needs an IG-12.
Yeah, everybody does.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I'm not that big into Black Series either, but at that price, I was, and for a character that I really enjoyed, the only one I paid full price for is I did get Brutus as soon as that came out, just because I was.
And now he's dead.
Yeah, now he's dead. Razor Crest all over again.
Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, like, when was the last time they made a Shistavanian Wolfman toy?
Right. And we were noticing, or I noticed that with all of he comes with all the 5 pistols, and they're all different designs. They're not all the same blaster, which I thought was really cool, and they have a very pirate look to them. But then I went back and I watched the show, and on close-ups, it matches. He's got 5 mismatched blasters on his bandolier and in his holsters. And I was like, what a cool detail to add in there, not only on the Black Series, but in the show itself.
Have they made a figure of the Jaleel White character, the Gunter?
No, not yet. No, they just came. They haven't come out. I mean, they're just coming out with Shmi, and it's in that one $8 line. They didn't even do a Black Series of Shmi, so
yeah,
that's what I'm waiting for.
We need the Urko character to go along with the Carson Teva we're not getting. So
yeah, speaking of Shin Hati, her and Balin, that's a whole nother story I could use more of. Give me some of their backstory, either in a Tales of animated or in a book or something. I would definitely eat up more Balin and Shin for sure on that.
Yeah.
I've got a few things. The comic, picked up the Hot Wheels N1. I couldn't stand that DB was the only one that had one. And I passed it by the first time I went to Target. And then a week later, when I went back again, it was still sitting on the peg, feeling lonely. So I had to. But Mrs. Brown Leader found, she picked me up a copy of Before the Storm, which is an EU novel
Yes.
Black Fleet Crisis, and I actually have never read it, but and it doesn't even look like the spine got cracked on it, but it's in really good shape. And so we were talking about it, and next thing I know, what does she do? She orders the whole trilogy for me, and all from a thrift store find. She got these off eBay, but so now I've got that trilogy to start flipping through. But without the spines cracked, I don't even know if I want to. I might pay the extra for the Kindle version just to
I feel your pain.
Yeah. But then the only other thing I wanted to show, which you guys kind of knew about, which is went to Ollie's last week and found this print. It was only like $15, and so we'll definitely have to get that thrown up on the wall. And the funniest thing about that story was they had two, and my mother-in-law, and you guys know who my family is. My mother-in-law bought the other one, and
that blows my mind still.
Right?
I don't see that something your mother-in-law would hang in her living room.
No, it isn't. But she started laughing, and I think it's to kind of tease Jeff. So
that makes more sense.
My brother-in-law. So we'll have to see. But she said she's
more sense.
She said she's gonna hang it up in her house. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, that was my big acquire piece this week. So. All right. Well, let's see. Any other comments here real quick and we'll wrap up. So from Maya, I was only buying a Stormtrooper variants of Black Series. Still feels like I have like 1 million of them. Well, you got to have 1 million troopers.
Yeah. Absolutely.
1 million more on the way.
Yep. Let's see. Need a home. And then he said, I have wall space. So I'm sure you do. Just hit up your Ollies if you have an Ollie's near you. And then from Carbonate's interesting wall art with the in-laws. And then final comment, Adelphi Rangers, did your Ollies have the tack on Death Star print too? No, they had one of the sequel movies. And I can't remember which one. I think it might have been Force Awakens. I think they had there. But Brian, thanks for coming on and joining us tonight. Really loved hearing about the book. And like I said before the show, I need you to churn out more because I've read all your stuff and I need more. I need more BattleTech. So
tell Catalyst.
Yeah, I will. We'll start a writing campaign. We need more Bryan Young. And you said you're doing a graphic novel with Mike, right?
Mike Stackpole. Yeah, Mike Stackpole and I are doing a series of 4 BattleTech graphic novels. We're writing them together. There's a really terrific BattleTech artist who's drawing them, and he's starting on the first graphic novel now. His name's Eldon Cowger, and they're going to be a lot of fun. And again, they're designed to be an intro into the BattleTech space for people who really dig graphic novels. So.
Right on.
Yeah.
Very cool. And so VoidBreaker, that's the newest book. It came out just less than a week ago, right?
Yep.
And where can people find it?
You can find it wherever you get books, online at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, your local game stores. You can get it through there. Your local bookstores, you can order it through them. If you want a signed copy, you can get it at my website, which is swankmotron.com, and you can order a signed copy through me. And I'm going to be around doing conventions around the country with copies and doing signings and stuff. So if you catch me at any of those, say hello. And of course I'll be at Star Wars Celebration in Japan. So.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. And Full of Sith is on all the podcatchers, right?
Yep. Full of Sith is across all the podcast networks. It's just fullofsith.com. And you can listen to more than, like 600 episodes going back to 2013. And interviews with just about anybody you can think of over all that time. So just fullofsith.com.
Right on. And once again, all your socials are at Swankmotron, right?
Yep.
All right, right on. And Carbonite's awesome interview. Thank you, Brian. Smash that like button. Absolutely, yeah. Definitely follow. And we're broadcasting live on X or Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Kick. And hopefully more services soon. You can find us on all the socials, everything. Definitely give Brian a follow. If you don't follow him on one of the socials, make sure you do that. And then, yeah, if you want to take a dive into something outside of Star Wars, his books are a great entry point into the BattleTech universe. And there's a lot of, as Scruffy found out, there is a lot of history and a lot of, it is a very deep pool to dive into. And VoidBreaker would be a good entry point into that universe. So definitely check it out. So, all right. With that, guys, I think we will get out of here.
Yep, I gotta go start watching AI so I can check out Gigolo Joe.
Right on. So thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Audio version will be up in a couple days. So Brian, thanks again for joining us on the show. We really appreciate it. Welcome back anytime. Definitely we'll have you on when the next book comes out, and and anytime you want to chill out and talk Star Wars with us. So with that, this is Brown Leader signing off for the crew, and you have been listening and watching Hyperspace Heroes. That's no moon.
Where is it?
It doesn't seem to be playing.